Yeah, no, thank you, Tara. And no, so I think what we'll probably start off with is, if you haven't seen it, we have about a 3.5 minute intro video that explains the product and actually features one of the people on the Zoom session. Trisha Bell is Labrador pilot user #1. So just about this time, Trisha, last year, we put the robot in. It was February in 2021. We put the first robot into your house. So Trisha's on there with 3 other of the pilot users. So I think what I'll do is I'll share my screen and I will try to play that video. See how successful I am here. So I'll start it up and let me know if that's showing. Is that up?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I'm going to go ahead and play it, and then we'll jump into some slides and have plenty of time for questions.
Years ago, we began working on a new type of personal robot. We designed it to physically assist people in their daily lives, especially where pain or other health conditions impact their activities. Our mission is to empower individuals to live more independently and to do more of what they want to do.
I feel very strongly about living independently and living on my own. I have 3 children who all invite me to be part of their lives, but I don't want to be dependent on them. And so anything that I can find that will help me do that is really, really valuable to my quality of life. It's my aid, it's my assistant. That's like a third hand for me. In my mind, I'm still 23, but my body isn't. And the robot lightens the load for me and allows me the time and the energy to do the things that are really still very important for me to explore. I still have a lot to do.
Alexa, ask Lab 1 to come to the dining room.
Okay, going to the dining room now.
Using a Labrador provides me a lot of independence, whether it's setting the table or getting the laundry into the washing machine. I'm not lifting anything, I'm not having to bend over, I'm not at risk of falling. It's providing me with the ability to do tasks that normally I would have to ask for help with. It's like having a second person in the house. It helps that much.
Some of the abilities that I lost following my stroke was the use of my right side. I've never realized how much I couldn't do anymore. But with the retriever, when it was introduced to me, it was like regaining that whole right side again, because it was able to carry and move things for me that I unable to do at this point. So it's given me that confidence level to where with the retriever, that's my right hand buddy. You know, it's something that I look forward to and that I could say, hey, you know what, let's go on with life. Like, it doesn't stop here, it continues.
Doing the groceries is what you should be doing anyway. You don't miss bringing in the groceries, you know, things like that, until you can't do it anymore. And to not have to ask for help, to be able to do it myself, not struggle with trying to lift a bag or put it on my lap and roll into the kitchen one at a time. I could get these things done. The independence and the freedom and just the self-worth of doing it, not having to feel that, you know, you're somebody's burden. The robot gave all that back.
Okay, so hopefully that came through okay. So that's the Labrador Retriever. And as I mentioned, Trisha Bell is in the video and she graciously let us abuse her house as well, and during the study and in the filming for parts of it. But you know what we try to do in that is explain the product and our mission through the voice of the people who are intended to use it. And, you know, when we're talking, you know, I just some background on this is the reason I think I was first inspired on this was watching my mom progress from walking to using a cane, to using a walker, to using a wheelchair. And she's still around. She just turned 91. But, you know, seeing things get progressively more difficult as they age. And, you know, a lot of folks, when you first sort of start talking about this, they think they sort of categorize it as, well, this is just something for, you know, old people or whatever. And, you know, just turning 55 myself, I sort of have a different view. I think that age is an accelerant. It's a factor in all this. It sort of makes, you know, recovery more difficult. It brings on more likelihood of conditions or things that we face. But what we were trying to tell through that story is that it's a variety of ages that can have something that's interrupting your desire and your target level of activity, particularly in the home. And so we try not to use, you go to our website and we don't use terms like disabled. We don't try to use terms we definitely don't use terms like elderly, because I don't I now think I qualify for the senior discount at Dunnies or something, but I don't feel like that. And I think that first statement that that you heard Madge say, like, in my mind, I'm still 23. And that really strikes home. And I think a lot of us can relate to some things when either temporarily or permanently, or as a progressively, our bodies just aren't what they were before, and they don't do the same thing. And that affects a lot of people. So the mission of the product was really to sort of say, take all these issues that could affect daily activities, which involve moving things. And that's a lot. We move stuff a lot in our house. Like, think about it. If you stop doing that, the food, the drinks, the laundry, the groceries, like Trisha shows in there, it's a non-trivial problem. And for some, it's an inconvenience. For some, it's a source of pain or a fear of falling. And for some, like my mom, who's now either, you know, full-time in a wheelchair or in a hospital bed at home, if her caregiver is not there at a certain time, you know, which she only gets certain windows, it's a massive hurdle if she has an upset stomach and wants to take something for it, or she's cold and wants a blanket. You know, the few inches might as well be a mile away for her. And whereas for others, I look back to my mom when she was still walking, and could the product have helped her stay more active? Could it have helped eventually become a platform where we could be assessing some things about the activity and saying, hey, Mom, you know, you're walking with a little limp there if you didn't notice, and let's talk to the doctor before that gets more serious, and things like that. So we look at this as really a tool for independence. We're trying to design that to really customize it to fit people's lives within the limits of the technology that's available now. And that's our mission. And hopefully that came across. I'll go a quick background through us, so not to spend a lot, but this is our third time to sort of make a hit in robotics. Our background's in consumer robotics, and I go back to 1998 launching smart Lego sets for kids that help them build and program robots to do what they want. And my claim to fame that really impresses 5-year-olds is that I launched one of the most successful best-selling Lego products of all time. Less impressive to others, but then we worked, you know, we went on from there, we went on to work on floor cleaners. So we sort of took a step up, and we were introduced in 2010 as part of the team that introduced one of the first smart robotic floor cleaners that could track its position as it cleaned. That was called Mint at the time, and it's now called Brava, because we got acquired by iRobot. And we went on to work on it. So if you buy a Roomba today and it's about $350 or $400 or more, and it tracks where it cleans, that technology is the stuff that we worked on. And so, you know, what we're doing, as you can see, is we're starting with robots doing things that are practical and are functional and have a market, and working our way up to make them bigger and bigger and do bigger things. So Roomba and Brava are about under 4 inches tall. The Retriever goes up to 30 8 inches, and weighs quite a bit more and has a ton more sensors and things like that. So anyway, so that's our background. And and what it's meant is that you saw the intro video, is that it's really meant to lighten the load of daily activities, bring critical items within reach. For so many people, is it's, when we look at it, we tend to have the stereotype of a robot being an android. Like we think of robots in our own image. And the problem with that is we don't know how to do that yet, especially safely and for a low cost. We're doing it more and more. You can see certain companies that have jumping robots and dancing and robot dogs and things, but they are mimicking human abilities. We don't have the dexterity and the muscles and the perception and all sorts of things. We're really far away from that. And so what the idea was, well, most people, not everybody, but most people that have some sort of challenge have the ability to reach about 12 to 18 inches. And if we could just bring things within reach of them, then they can, even my mom, with all the issues that she's facing, her hand and her eye and her coordination is far greater than any industrial robot. You spend $1 million on it, and my mom can beat them when it comes to manipulation. And so what we're trying to blend is that what are the things that people can't do? Like, okay, well, maybe it's hard with someone with rheumatoid arthritis or with early stage MS, or a back or some herniated disc, or recovering from post-acute surgery, to carry a 20-pound laundry basket. That might be really hard. Or what we hear is when people start using a cane, that, setting the table, like just going back and forth with making all these little trips because they're just holding one thing at a time. And the interesting thing is that we hear the same thing from a 40-year-old guy who is recovering from a stroke and paralysis on his arm. That's Armando that you saw in the video, saying the exact same thing that a woman in her 80s is saying, is that, man, this is like, my food's getting cold by the time I get there. I'm fatigued, I'm tired, I don't feel comfortable doing this. And I'm changing how I'm eating because of this. So that's sort of the mission, is really to move things where people have some sort of challenge of moving things themselves. And long term, it starts off, as Tricia can definitely testify, I want to give her a voice during this, is that you may not expect that you need it a lot, but you end up finding a lot of uses for it. And then we think long term that can be a platform for a wide variety of home health applications and things like that. So the way it works is we try to keep it really simple, and hopefully Tricia can attest to this, is that we set up a series of bus stops, and the bus stops are the places you want the robot to go. So you can either have, as you saw in the video, you could have a cell phone and say kitchen, and the robot will drive to the kitchen, or say, laundry room, or whatever you want to call things. You can have it on a tablet. You can use the word from Amazon and say ask Lab 1 to go to the dining room, and the robot will automatically drive to that location. The blue routes are sort of the flight paths. These are sort of elastic routes that the robot knows how to navigate around your house. If the dog's in the way, it should stop and avoid it. In Tricia's case, I think you have a border collie, one of the dogs, that started to herd the robot because it learned that it could manage it that way, which is good. So now we have to look at dog recognition. But basically, it's designed to have the sensors on it to see the world in 3D and go through, like if you move the chair or other things, it'll naturally go around those. And go to those positions. And then we'll be doing more things as we roll the product out to let you edit and add spots for in there. But currently what we do is when we go into someone's home during the pilots, we talk to them about, hey, where are the places you want it to go? We set it up, we train it on their house, get a few stops to go to start, and then we can remotely teleop into the robot on their permission, and then add more locations over time. So the idea is that it's not a rigid map, is that this could be adjusted, and eventually there's be tools that you could just even push the robot a little bit, hit a button that says save, and it would update the position. But this basic metaphor works really well. And we learned a lot of that both at our prior startup working on floor cleaners and on Roomba, is that simple is really helpful. A lot of people talk about AI and being very sophisticated and stuff. And the more you try to guess what somebody's thinking, the more deeper you get yourself into a hole. So what we really try to do is make it very surface level, that what is it? And for some folks, like, that are, comfortable with the touch screen, a lot of folks say, hey, I just want to use my phone and hit a button and it goes to that location. For folks that we're going to be testing in other areas, we'll just literally have a little Bluetooth button, a button that you can press, and it's just, if I stick that on my dad's recliner, it's always going to come to that location and park right next to the recliner and line up. So these were the selfie videos coming from the users. 3 of them are from Trisha. This was like as we were doing the study, what was really encouraging was getting Trisha your text and everything about this, and like stuff that we so we didn't give anyone a script. So gave somebody the product, say, hey, use it like you want to, and just see what happens. And generally what we were seeing, it varied. It went through sort of seasonalities and curves, but most people were using it about 90 times a month or more. So the typical tracking rate was about 90 times in terms of like, that's how frequently they're sending it to one of those different bus stops, like go to the kitchen, go to this location. How often people are picking things on and off the robot is actually a lot more higher. We weren't tracking that, but just how often they were telling it to move. And so, Trisha's, video of this is from her using that scene showing the Instacart delivery in the video is a reenactment of Trisha saying, hey, guess what I used it for? I had the groceries and I put the groceries on it and then sent it off. And the tortilla soup and taquitos, same thing, was that was coming from a scene that Trisha and her husband Angel sent us, and like showing it. I remember getting it at night and I was really hungry and I was like working late at work. And so but that's why we included it in there. And another one, Trisha was just tidying up, was like creating we didn't have any list on this one, is like putting like a bin for recycling and trash and just other things and going around and tidying up. And we heard the same thing from Janet, one of the other users, of just like cleaning, like using it to hold supplies, and Armando was using it to hold tools while he was doing some repairs, because he was able to just use one arm to do that. And so I think the thing that, I think especially when we look at like Trisha, when you sent the one about tidying up, is that, it's not just tidying up about yourself. It's like you wanted it to go to your husband's office too. So you could do things for him, like send him the food or bring other stuff around. And we heard that consistently, that, this isn't just about someone's independence of their own activity. It's about what are they able to contribute back. And that's incredibly important in that equation. As I look at we have 3 trash cans we usually take in and out. And my wife has this sort of metric where we track she always leaves a couple for me to bring back up, just to sort of make sure that one of us is, she's usually the one who does more of the work, is sort of coming along for it. So what you saw in the video, we try to be pretty honest with what we were seeing. Everyone, what they were using was sort of the base robot. They were using, it had the ability to navigate and go up and down. We weren't using the tray retrieval yet. So that's something we're going to be rolling into testing. But just even before we get into pulling things off and delivering them, we were seeing the sort of people commanding it about 90 times a month. And this is this one I put up there not really to it's not that we're trying to compete with a caregiver or things like that. And a lot of times the product is really meant to complement or supplement or extend the impact of a caregiver. But just in terms of like, sometimes when we're talking to folks who aren't in the category, it's about the economics. And so our goal is to get this to about $100 per month, plus some, either upfront cost or whatever. Long term, I think we'd be able to even do a base model that's even possibly more affordable. We have to look at that, but we're talking like $100 or $200 a month is the economics we're trying to do for a consumer to have this in their home. Maybe if you're doing home health and you're adding more things in your PACE agency, it may be a little bit more, but we're just talking in increments of 100. And people, well, that sounds like a lot of money. And it's like, well, compared to what you may be spending on other things, we don't think it is. It is a lot, and we hope that we can get insurance. We have some activities that we're going to be describing pretty soon about tests we'll be doing in that area. But for folks who aren't familiar with it, for my mom back in St. Louis, Missouri, which has a relatively affordable cost of living, it works out to be about $100 a visit, if you're receiving home care. And in the economics, it's really the difficulty of sending labor to the home. The typical range is like $25 or more for non-medical caregivers to come into the home. There's usually most often you're seeing like a 4-hour minimum charge, unless you have a specific relationship and you're are doing things with, with someone. But, it just works out to be a lot. You could be running $3,000 to $6,000 a month. And so again, we don't look at robots, especially now, as replacing a human caregiver. They can't do all those things, the complexity and everything. But if we can start to say, how do we shift some of that cost burden and say, well, can we save a visit or two, by allowing somebody to set stuff up and then having the robot there to support somebody 24/7, or allowing a family member or caregiver, hey, I have to go out to work, or I have to go and do something, and you feel like you're covered in terms of what you can be doing or what you need for certain things. So that's sort of the way we look at it. And I think it's like the world is not one or the other, but what's the benefit if you can have both for there? And I don't have this slide. I can probably, I'm going to go over to my, what we sort of see this, and I definitely encourage people to go to our website. It's labradorsystems.com to, just learn more information. It's actually pretty intense, but if you look at it, I think longer term, we look at this as a platform for care. So you can imagine that you can have someone, might be a health system, when you get discharged for knee surgery or some procedure, that they may send a robot along with you into the house for 3 months as part of your recovery plan. And it could include a tablet with, to enabling home health check-ins, or, Trisha's physical therapist, Kristen, talked about being able to do remote sessions, over, with a device on a screen. And the robot has some interesting sensors to actually feel how much pressure you're pushing on it, or whatever, or look at range of motion. And then there's other things like starting, like if there's folks that are using digital health solutions, like either medication reminders or pill dispensers, we don't want to recreate those, but what if we can tie them to the robot? So for instance, if you get discharged by a hospital system and hey, we've got this digital health platform, and it includes your reminders on your medication and all these other things, that's great. But if that just goes off on your phone and you're not by it, or they put a pill dispenser in your kitchen and you're in the living room, we think there's a gap there. And so what if you could actually physically bring the device to someone, bring their medication, and do a physical reminder of that, in addition to just the digital. And I think that's where we start. And then same thing, like we have really good sensors on this robot, and we don't have the software on there now, but we have the hardware to be able to track somebody's gait as they're walking. And so could we naturally sample, with their permission, could somebody say, hey, the robot is just going to look at how you're walking at times and give that either feedback directly to the person, family member, or to a trusted physical therapist. So something that's in your trust loop. It's not the company. We're not selling that data, but the idea is that we have this tool that could say, hey, there's some change in activity. And, the reason I use that as a prelude is that this is one of the things that we were looking at. This chart is basically showing the activity, those number of bus stops the robot was going to. This particular person was in their 40s with advanced stage Parkinson's. And what's relevant to this is they live in a two-story townhouse. So their floor plan was probably like 800 square feet on the first floor. So they didn't have too many bus stops. They had the kitchen, a dining table, which was set up for her to use with the wheelchair, and then a family room with some exercise equipment, plus like a place for her to sit to watch TV and sort of be comfortable. And so what we were tracking for everybody was every time the robot would go someplace, it would record that. And it would record not the person. It wasn't taking a picture of the video or anything, but it was saying, hey, I got sent over to the kitchen, or I just got sent over to the family room, or Trisha, you sending it to your kitchen and then sending it to your office, then sending, those sorts of things. You could see those activities. What we were looking for initially was, do we see that the robot our mission originally was just, is the robot being used? So without giving anybody a script, how often is Trisha going to use it? And I remember one day I was in Home Depot and I get notifications when the robot drives. And it was our first deployment, and it was in Trisha's house, and it was a Sunday, and all of a sudden this robot was going everywhere in her house. And I was like, checked in later, like, oh yeah, we were just playing with it to see if it would go everywhere. So we saw it was like 40 times in one afternoon.
It was fun.
Yeah, so which is good, because then people, that's what we want to have people embrace. But what we were concerned about was, and the reason why we ran these studies for about 5 to 8 weeks, was that we wanted to make sure we got through that honeymoon phase. Like, hey, it's really cool. It's technology. It drives around. The dogs like it. The cat's jumping on it, all that. And then it just starts collecting dust. And so with everybody, we were running these so that we could say, hey, in the 5th week or in the 2nd month, is it being used as much as the 1st? Everybody we tested, that was the case, is that we went to this sort of stable state of there. And some people had very steady schedules. You could see their routines. Some people, you could say, oh, it's laundry day, because we're spiking. So some people would use it every day consistently. Others would use it intensely for certain days. Like Trisha with Janet, you could tell that she was doing something outdoors because that was her outdoor day. And then the chores in the house day was another day, when it would spike or something. And so the interesting thing here was, for this individual, she was spiking and getting like 13 times on certain days, 9 times on the others. Some of those are 0, and that was back before we had a self-charging dock. So she was like everybody else, she forgot to plug it in at times and we had to wait a day to start. So we now have the robot docks itself. So all the Trisha had to start off with the least featured robot we had, and now all the other people have all the bells and whistles. But if you look at that, it was interesting. We're saying to her, like, well, why is it that you're using it 2 or 3 times on certain days and 13 and 9 times on others? And I said, is that when the caregiver is there, and is it just what's going on? And basically, she said, no, those are my on and off days for Parkinson's. And and you're all you are more experts. I'm learning about this all the time, but the on and off day is that to what extent are her Parkinson's issues interfering with her activities? So on an off day, her speech is about, maybe I can understand about 1 word every 10 to 15 seconds because of their difficulty controlling that. Or on an on an on day, she's able to wheel her wheelchair. Or do things on an on day. But on an off day, which at the end of the shift of the caregiver puts her down on a mattress or a pad in the family room, propped up, have the robot next to her, have water, drinks, cell phone, blanket, and she's waiting for either the next caregiver or for her sons to come home later that night, because she doesn't have the ability to move at that time. And I think one of the biggest learnings we saw, like early on in 2017, when we started going to people's homes, was that for so many people, whatever level they're at, it's not a flat line. It is variable. They're having good days and bad days. They're dealing with changes in medication, or for someone with pain, they are, one day they're at work and, driving and they're okay. And the next week they're flat on their back. And so I think that it sort of served as a lesson to us about the stereotype of, how you sort of think of someone. It's a much more diverse, and the value of having something that when you need it, it's there, and when you don't need it. And just enabling people to be more active and work through those low periods in there. So again, what was happening here is those days were when she was really, when her symptoms were less. And then when she was having a bad day was when you're seeing it just sent to a couple locations. And we asked her, said, does your doctor actually track your on and off days? She goes, yeah, they're supposed to do a log of it, and I don't. We haven't really figured out how to do it. And then her caregiver, who was part of the state, chimed in and said, I'm her primary caregiver. I do 4 hours, every day, Monday through Thursday during the day, and then I don't see her for 3 days. I'd love to see this, because I have a theory that when she has an off weekend, or when she has an on weekend, it's going to be an off week, or if we're changing up therapy or medication. And so I think this is really helpful to sort of look at how do you, in a way that's non-intrusive, just saying how could family members, or how could trusted people in your care network be able to have access to sort of saying, hey, someone didn't we didn't see any activity with the robot today. You want to call and check in on mom, or something was a little bit off. And that's how, how we're looking for it. The bottom chart was really about the interplay with the caregiver. So as I mentioned, she had a caregiver. The primary one was working, I think, from 10 to 2. And what's really interesting is that the usage would increase as soon as the caregiver left. And so in her case, we were saying, hey, do you want the robot to help you with, the lunch? She's like, no, I like my caregiver. She really likes her caregiver. It's a good relationship. I want the caregiver to help me set up the table and everything. And that's exactly what we want to empower. But when the caregiver's gone, then you saw this usage really spike up at 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. and all that sort of adjustment time for when the caregiver was gone. And that's how we're looking at it. So again, you see all these people put out questions like, should a robot be a caregiver? And it's like, a robot should be a tool, and just use it as the way it works for you and things like that. So some of these numbers are probably actually off now, they're below. But so what we did last year is we started with COVID and everything else, we started rolling the robots out. And I think since we had these models built, we've done 150 kilometers of self-driving, either in our own testing or in home placements like at Trisha's house. That turned out to be 25,000 successful routes, like the robot being sent someplace and coming back. It's more than this. It was at least 250 days that we were in homes without a human in the loop. Like when you talk about robotics, a lot of times they're like, if you're seeing a self-driving car, you're seeing like a delivery robot on a sidewalk. There's usually somebody with a little switch that can take over right away. And as Trisha knows, there's no switch on the robot. You can hit stop, but it's on its own, unless the dog wants to hurt it or something. So we were autonomous for over 250 days. The rating, when we asked people at the end on a 1 to 10 scale, what was what would they recommend it to someone? It was tracking around a 9.5. There's definitely areas of improvement, but I think our lowest score was an 8.5 about like, what could we do more for what, like we don't have a cup holder. So it's like really easy to spill coffee or something right now on the prototype and dealing with that. And then, when we've been studying the market about this $100 a month target where we're getting positive feedback. And then the home market is Tada, guess who's there? So I got Trisha up there and I want to give Trisha time to talk about her experience, is that I really view it as people fighting to maintain their daily independence. And that situation can change depending on where you are in life and maybe some other issues that face it. But like every time, even some areas where we weren't expecting, like we're working with a institute for folks with low vision. And you first go, well, why do they need a robot? And it's like, well, because for some of them, it's incredibly frustrating to keep the management of where things are, and having a place where you can keep stuff and it moves them with you could be, and the robot again provides that consistent, it's going to be there. It's going to, do that, could be really helpful. And so usually it's folks that have that desire. And when the thing we've learned from occupational therapists and physical therapists is that, how you want to call it rate somebody, but how you score that person, it's where are their current abilities and current activities relative to where they want to be. It's all user centric. And so what we're trying to do is there's a gap. You talk to someone and there's a gap between I have this aspiration, but this is where I'm at. And so it is, and dealing with this and talking to everyone, it is, I hate to use the word non-trivial. It's deeply emotional. Like when you start working with folks, even doing the pilot studies, we're getting into their story. And I know you as professionals do this all the time, but it really is something that I think if people really heard the stories, they'd be shocked about why we're not doing more in technology around this. We spend so much time making a better coffee maker, or like me, I spent like years making a better floor cleaner. And those are important too, because people use those too, but we should be doing this as well. And that's what we're trying to bring, or highlight and do visibility to. The numbers are just staggering. And so, you have all types of issues. So you have like 54 million Americans suffer from arthritis. It's something almost like 20 million people suffer from high impact chronic pain. I think the CDC describes that as pain that's interrupting your daily activities for most every day of the last 6 months. That's high impact chronic pain. And we've talked to folks about that like that we have a gentleman talking about a pain trip, that it's the equation of, do I want to sort of like, my back is cool and I need to go get a drink of water, but do I sort of hold off for a few hours so that I can do a few other things because I don't want a pain trip right now. I don't want to have an episode. And that's not healthy, to be making that equation between hydration and pain. We have 20 million with diseases such as MS, Parkinson's, cerebral palsy. 22 million use mobility aids. And then the number that's really high is the number of unpaid caregivers. So I think it's up to 53 million Americans are there. And that number is growing at the same rate as the population above 85. Like it's really, again, I'm in business and technology, and I was naive as that is, we don't have more nursing home beds now than we do, compare, like, I think we're flat or we're actually losing them currently. But we're dramatically, in the time that we doubled the amount of people that would need nursing home beds, we were flat, we were zero on growth. And the way we've been doing that has been metering out care, pushing people, sometimes for better purposes, having people go to like post-acute rehab hospitals, then discharging to the home or to another location. But so much of that is going on to the family members and to basically sort of fill in the gap there. So a lot of need. Segments that we look at, and this is a little bit different angle than people think, is like, again, if I talk to investors, they're thinking of someone in a nursing home. And, we did a survey, and we originally, this was just one sort of slice of it, but we were doing a survey that was looking at, could we talk to the folks who are 45 to 65, or 45 to 64 as a means of reaching their parents? And was, it might be that they have income, they're active in their care, and they may be a way of, instead of, in addition to directly targeting people 65 plus, could we target folks that are 45 to 64? And the interesting thing we found about this, and this was a survey, it was biased, it was towards high income households, that this would be an out-of-pocket expense and not really an issue on the cost for them. But we think it's indicative of the general trend so we found that, we asked the question is, do you or someone that that you're involved in the care have some sort of, have a health issue that's interrupting your daily activities, are using for things? And the answer was 38%, which is high, which you think is high, but not. Like I have 3 to 4 family members in my immediate family that fall under that category right now. So basically and what was really interesting was we expected about a quarter of them saying, yeah, it's my mom or my dad, I'm sort of involved in the care decisions for someone that's there. But what was really surprising was about 18% of the segment said that issue is, I have it. I've got like some pain, I have a pain issue or some other issue that I'm facing in that. And we tend to not look at that. We tend to sort of think that, you look at the statistics and it's, folks that use walker, wheelchairs, and canes, it really goes up as you go past 65 and especially past like your 80s in terms of like that progression. But there's a lot of folks that are in that 45 to 64 segment that are having either early onset conditions, diseases, or having just basically pain where you're not seeing it as much when you're going around. So, and that's backed up by the CDC. So that high impact, that 19 million or so people with high impact pain, 10 million of them are 45 to 64. And so there's a lot of things I think about folks that are in that younger band, reaching them. And like I was talking to a woman as a candidate for the pilot study who responded to a Facebook ad we had. And she has a herniated disc, and she's, she doesn't carry the laundry basket. She doesn't carry the groceries in. She has to ask her sons for that. But she's in her, I think, late 40s, maybe late 40s. And she's like, well, I don't need this yet because, well, I shouldn't. Like I shouldn't be, somebody who's more advanced in a problem should have it. And it's like, what we want to say is, well, if you can't do something, why don't you have a tool for doing it? and like let you have that independence and be more comfortable in what you're doing. So part of it's also shifting perspectives, because I think the biggest impact we could have is to get this earlier into people's lives. And so it's you're to sort of extend your abilities, not sort of strain stuff that you shouldn't be, and focus on just, you being healthy yourself and things like that. And then, where this fits, this is sort of an eye chart, but way we look at it is that you could have lots of issues, and whether that's arthritis, COPD creates a lot of issues around mobility and things that people don't expect. Stroke, as we have with Armando in the video, MS, Parkinson's, cerebral palsy, or spinal injury. And I think the thing that we were just showing here is I won't explain the whole legend here. We were tracking people as they were being filtered into the study. And the whole point was that I could have somebody who's diagnosed with Parkinson's, but they're either asymptomatic or it's very early stage for them. And that they're clearly not a target for us. They don't need the product yet. And I could also have somebody with Parkinson's. That we had a gentleman that was going to go into the study and had a bad episode right before with a medication interaction, and ended up in the hospital and in acute care. And okay, that person we're not able to help. But it's this band where it's where you start having restricted mobility or like that onset where certain things like lifting, carrying, certain motions are becoming difficult for you, onto where you have your disruption of ADLs and you're using caregivers. So, and in that regard, again, like a gentleman with a stroke is, in his 40s can be very similar to the issue we see with a woman with rheumatoid arthritis in her 80s. They could be, and so we look at the issue from what the medical condition is, which is relevant from, okay, what could we help with? But it's really comes down to the level of activity. And so when we talk to physical therapy or occupational therapists, it's like, how could they be assessed against the standard? And like, I think I just linked one that comes out of Canada from there. So cool. Finally, to wrap it up, is we're offering the product in 2 stages to start. There's the Retriever, which does everything you see in the video. And then there's a simplified model, same size, but it runs at a fixed height. So we're calling that the Caddy. And the difference is really that the Retriever raises and lowers, which is really helpful. And it also retrieves. It slides things on and off the deck and can put them back away. The Caddy is actually most of other than the lifting function was what was in the pilot. And we had a lot of people using that functionality. So we're going to we'll offer a base model that has different prices and things like that. So cool. So yeah. So anyway, so that's I want to pause there and just let you ask questions. Definitely let Tricia speak. This is great that we have you here, Tricia, to sort of talk about from your perspective, and let people ask questions. So cool.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, hop on. And Tricia, if you want to jump in and say a few words about your experience, go for it. Don't want to put you on the spot, but
it's okay.
I have a few quick questions. How would other organizations reach out to you, Mike, if they would like to see your presentation?
So there's a couple options. One is if you email, I should have put it up there. It's email Carrie or Mike at labradorsystems.com. So I'll go ahead and share it again on our website. There's a place to contact us on our website as well. Let me go share. We should have left the screen up for a second. But if you do, probably the fastest response you're going to get is Carrie, Kerry at Labrador Systems. It's systemswithanus.com.
And I just put it in the chat as well.
Yeah, Carrie's online right now with us.
And when do you think that it would be available more to general public?
So the target, unfortunately, the supply chain is slowing everything down. So when we announced at CES last month, we basically are saying we're targeting full production by the second half of 2023. So it is out there. We are trying to have pilot or beta units available before that point, so earlier in the year. And then we're doing pilot studies. Pilot studies are pretty limited because we only have a certain number of robots, but we are for very discrete testing, or like going into a skilled nursing facility or going into a rehab center. Sometimes we're just going in for a few days, but we're bringing the robots to let people touch and interact with them and give us feedback. So it really depends on what your organization might be interested in doing. If it's an evaluation, we may be able to do a meeting and even do some limited placement. But then for real usage, it's going to be the beta and the full production units, which is 2023.
And then my last question, because one of the organizations that I'm involved in, and Tara and I have had these conversations a lot, of the elderly not being into high-tech stuff and how we can improve that. So what do people have to have originally in their home? Do they have to have Alexa? They have to have Wi-Fi in order to take advantage of your program?
So it's helpful if they have a broadband internet in the house. They don't necessarily need Alexa, but even in that case, and I think this gets into some of we had a gentleman that didn't have, he just had his mobile phone. He didn't have any internet wired to his house. So we're for that, we can even set up like a mobile solution. So depending, it'll cost more, but we could have the robot remotely connected over a cell link. And it's pretty much its own thing, especially as 5G and other things spread out. The other part of that is that we are testing different levels. This is some of the research we'll be doing, like with partners like the University of Michigan Flint, is different modes of control. So if someone's comfortable with this, like my mom is not comfortable with a touchscreen phone. So for her, she actually does use Alexa, but just having these IoT buttons, these little buttons that you click and the robot comes to that location. So that's what we'll be testing as well. But the base thing is, for an easy install, it's somebody with broadband internet. Ideally, the easiest user is going to be someone who's comfortable either using a touchscreen or has a cell phone. But we're looking at ways to support more needs than just that.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Sure. So then I was going to let Tricia talk as well. I just wanted to feed your comments in. So.
Well, in answer to her question, I only had internet. I don't have Google or Alexa or anything. And I did have the basic model, but I only have internet, and it worked fine. That was my interaction with it. And I didn't have the phone. I only had the tablet. So you just said a tablet. I think we had 3 tablets. Yeah. So one by the front door where it was charging. There was one in the kitchen, and one I just set it on the robot so I could always tap it. So it's if they're not happy with the phone or comfortable with the phone, you do have just the screen. If you don't have Alexa or anything else, just to tell it where to go. So that was one thing. And getting back to what you were saying, Mike, that feeling like, oh, I don't need this yet. I mean, I have MS. I'm now in a wheelchair, and I was still like, no, I can do it. But Armando, is that his name?
Yes.
I don't have the use of my left arm. So it's very limited. I can only lift it about this high. That's it. I can't do much. I didn't even think about it. I've just grown so adapted to not having it that when the robot came, I realized, wow, I can do this, because I can't hold things. I can't grab things, but I could put it on the robot and I could send it and do things. I forgot about even being able not to use my left arm so much that in the good and the bad, the robot helped so much. But then I did realize, wow, I don't have a left arm. So it's very helpful. It's one of those things like Mike was saying, that as a user or as a person that has difficulties, you don't realize that you have them sometimes until this just makes up a world of difference, because now you have your full capabilities. So it was huge. Right? So Mike, you can even attest, I said, I don't need this.
No, so there was 2, yeah. So it was Janet. We were connected to Tricia and her sister Janet. And and there's a survey we do to screen people, because this is really hard to place these robots, especially during COVID and all the precautions we were taking. And so we have a survey, and there's a question at the end. They saw a very rough version of video, not what you got to see. And it says on a 1 to 10 scale, how interested are you? And Janet was a 10. Trisha, I think you were a 1, maybe a little bit. And
I was like, I'm more independent.
Yeah. And then I get this email back the next day or 2 days, like, I was thinking about it. I want to try the robot. And
I'm so glad.
Yeah. So, but I think one of the things you were talking about, Trisha, is I see it with a lot of folks, is that progressive, it's that gradual change where things are shifting on you, and then you don't realize how much that's happened over time. And I think that's, again, what we're trying to do is can use technology to sort of call out some of that stuff. Like there's things, again, with the progression. My mom is back in the Midwest, and flying to see her, seeing like seeing her every 6 months or a year, there's these, wow, mom's really changed. Whereas my brothers and sisters, I didn't notice because it was gradual. And right. So I think that's, again, something we're trying to understand. Somebody had a question, are we national? We're in, we're not in production yet. So our goal is to, we're at the factory now. So we're sort of focusing on Southern California and working our way out there. So the early markets will support, will be certain states out in this area. We are allowing people can make reservations right now, and then we're going to look at how we do delivery for the early folks, but and where the demand is. But probably what we'll do is we'll go to high needs areas, where, and also just where there's a large enough population. So like testing in Phoenix is something we're going to be doing. We're definitely going to look at Florida later and things, but our first goal is we need to get into production so we have units that we can ship. And then we'd love to partner with organizations, like, rather than us just selling the product, we're talking to PACE providers about them adopting it, or even them getting a fleet that they could deploy to their users and rotate it around. So if you're an organization or in senior living or home care, definitely reach out to Carrie.
I have one more question. Seeing Trisha's border collie come in, I also have a border collie that hates my vacuum. How much damage can a dog do to the equipment, like a border collie that doesn't really like?
Nothing. Like it. I have 2 dogs, and one is Trixie, and she would just be laying there and put out a paw, like, oh no, you don't. And then, or she'd put her tail in the way, or she would just walk in front of it. They don't do any damage. The robot stops. And I think that's what Trixie, I sent Mike and the team a video where I was leaving my office and the robot was in front of me. So there was Trixie in the front, and then Rudy was, and they just were taking turns making it stop and hesitate, but they can't damage it. They won't. If it senses them within feet, it never comes close to them. There's probably half a foot that it says, whoop, stop. And they were just having fun, especially some border collies would just make it stop or redirect it. It's the same with the vacuum. She'll let the Roomba run it, or, it's like, nope, you're not going here, because she knows it goes someplace else. So it'll stop and look for her. And so the robot is no problem. Doesn't affect a dog, a cat, anything, unless they're afraid of it. But other than that, if they're not, they never even get close.
Yeah, so I think some of the things we are in the user manual, we say use it around supervised pets, because like you're also, Trisha's dogs, I've met them a couple of times now, are very well behaved, but well within limits. I would say. But like my cat, I have to teach like not to ride it. It will stop. Like there's certain safety modes we're putting on. So if the cat jumps on it, it should stop while it's doing, because for some weird reason in the universe, cats like riding robots, like they like riding Roomba. I have we have some videos. We'll show that another time. But I would say is that we're trying to make it pretty robust. A dog can chew something up. That's always possible. But one of the differences with Roomba, and not to, I work from him and I robot as an investor, for full disclosure, is you don't have the high pitched noise or the loudness, which I think sets some animals off. Or some get accustomed to that. So we make the robot very quiet. We actually have to make more noise because right now it'll sneak up on you. It's pretty quiet. But the idea is if you have a dog that's going to tear apart a recliner, they may not be a good match for the robot. The robot's tougher than the recliner, but it's really just about understanding your pets and how they're comfortable. And yeah, my cats, man, I have some videos we'll post another time that they get very nonchalant around it and things.
Yeah. Mike, I had a couple of questions if I could. Great presentation. One is in terms of water resistance. So assistance with daily living is usually involving a bathroom. Just curious where that is. And then the other, maybe you could touch on what's the next generation in terms of where you're looking to go. And I'm thinking specifically around the ability to actually physically pick things up. And
great question. So, and all the like water resistance, it's actually hard problems. We're benefit from the fact that I used to work on a robotic mop. So we learned a lot about waterproofing from that. Actually, the #1 robotic mop in the world. Again, it impresses people that like mops. But the basic thing is we're actually working on that right now, where the water, we're trying to create spill paths where stuff will spill out in a certain direction, maybe collected in certain pockets. And then you can remove the panels to wipe it down. Like if you had something that was sticky, like somebody spilled a sugary soda or something on the robot, the panels will actually pop off and you can wipe it. So the idea is to make the internal, the internal part of the robot is all sealed up. And then these bumpers that we have that are pressure sensitive can be removed and wiped down. And it's sloped as well. I can, let me just go back to the, I'll show that we actually, we adapted the design when we were dealing with COVID. Is if you look at this top part of it, let me just bring that up. That's sloped to sort of encourage stuff not to spill over. The gray area is going to be a silicone or a rubber material, and then we'll have a path where stuff will be encouraged to drain down. We may have a cup holder that'll double serve as a reservoir, but for wiping down, you should be able to wipe it down. It's sealed. That's one of the patents that we applied for, was that mechanism is fully hidden. So it's not easy to gum up or whatever. It's all from under the deck or whatever. But it's also because a cat may jump on it, or my mom who was on blood thinners may put her arm on it. So we're trying to make it very inert in that. For next step, I think our next step is to make the robots smarter, like to use the sensors we have to just see more of what's going on to the level people are comfortable with, because I think there's a lot of value to individuals or to the health system on that. Robotic arms they've been spending a lot of time, like we're really far away from having an arm that could autonomously pick something out of my mom's refrigerator or something. And that's because she has everything in the world is in her refrigerator. But I know there are companies that are looking like that's where they have human in the loop. Like, could you have a caregiver combine an arm and have a caregiver maybe do some manipulation to pick something up off the floor and intervene or whatever. So for right now, we're just sort of taking it step by step. And our things are to make it work with the refrigerator, make it work with a microwave that would be like a dedicated device you could buy, so we could warm up food and do those sorts of things. Then we'll look at, I think we're going to hopefully be doing a version that universities can use and do the research with like the arms and the mechanisms on top of it.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. It's Courtney. Sorry, I'm not visible today. This is wonderful. I'm just so excited to learn about all this. My first question is that I noticed that it has a docking station, obviously. And how long does it go? Can it stay off the docking station? And how long does it need to dock to fully recharge?
Good question. So our current target is that it could last for a full day on a single charge. And then I think it's 3 to 4 hours to charge all the way back up. And it's linear. So if it's on there for half the time, it's actually probably at least half the charge. So you can look at it, it's sort of like a low mileage car. Most of the time it's just in standby mode, and then it's just driving or lifting is when it uses up its energy. What we're not sure about is, we know people want to plug their stuff into it. So plug their phone and charge it. So what we're doing right now is literally leaving extra space in that battery compartment. And we may have different levels, like a base model with that if you're not plugging things in and you just want to have it on there, it should, to be honest, it should be able to last in standby for a few days.
Okay.
Because it doesn't burn, it should, we have to figure out how fast we get to that. Just like, your cell phone could stay on in standby for a few days, or a tablet. So that's a long answer, but basically it's our idea. So one of the funny things, when we did introduce the charger, the dock into it, that was in the second half of the pilot studies. We realized that the robot had to have a conversation with people, because they might be using the robot at the time. Like, let's say it's at the laundry and it realizes it has to go back and charge. For Roomba, that's okay. Roomba just stops vacuuming and drives back and parks to the dock. For us, the person's using it. So we basically had to have this scheme where when everybody could set up, do you want the robot just to go? Do you want it to send you an alert and then move? Or do you want it to ask permission? And so literally the robot texts the person to say, hey, my battery's getting sort of low. I need to go. Do you want me to wait 30 minutes or can I go now? And so the idea is to sort of do this power management where we're never taking it too low, and to sort of adapt when people are using it. But the good news is we don't use a lot of power, just because the robot, especially in a home environment, it doesn't drive nearly as much as a Roomba does. It's mainly it's just shifting its location.
Hi, Mike. I'm sorry that I'm in and out, but I'm guessing that there are competitors out there. So who's your competitor and how are you managing that?
There aren't. You could loosely say that there's a dichotomy in the world where you can buy a robot today that costs you $10 to $20 to $30 a month. Like if you get a Roomba, you can actually get a Roomba on a subscription for $30 a month from iRobot. If you buy it straight out, or you get a Costco special, maybe that's over the life of the product, it's costing you $10 or $15 a month if you amortize it. But it's in that ballpark. If you go to some of the places that are using, like they're using robots now in restaurants for like carting, they don't do retrieval, they don't go up and down, but they basically just carry they bust the table. They just carry either the delivery of the food out to the table, and the waiter or waitress puts that on, or they dump all the dirty dishes on it and it goes back to the kitchen. Those robots, and same thing for security robots. Sometimes you'll see robots and scanning the shelves in grocery stores. Those robots run in the thousands per month. That's they're industrial grade robots that are designed for those applications, and a lot of them do great jobs, but they're in this $1,000, $2,000, some are even $6,000 a month. The hospital robots run even more. The big robots that you may see in a hospital or whatever. There is no one, to our understanding, doing this class of product in this sort of $100 to $200 range. And it's why we're funded by the National Science Foundation. It's why Amazon and iRobot are investors in us, is that there is no one doing this. Because what you have to do is you have to build this like a Roomba, but with the capabilities of a commercial robot. And
so what I'm hearing you say then, is that one of the distinctions is the price point, like the monthly charge.
Yeah.
But I have this vision in my mind, when you look at these robotic shows, and I don't know if it's the Japanese who have it, but you've got these ones that do have movable arms and you do things like that. So I guess I'm picturing, that they would be potentially competition.
If they worked. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't sound that arrogant. It's more about, so it's not about that. It's about that it's a humbleness about where we really are in robotics. Again, I've been in it for 25 years, is that you see, like, I'll give you an example. And I said this we had a really good senior living operator that understood this, is if you look at Amazon's warehouses, they have tens of thousands of robots they make that bring the whole shelf to the user. If you've seen the videos. So in a warehouse distribution center, they have all the pickers, the people that are packing everything you have in the box are at a station. The robot goes off and it lifts the entire shelf, not just the item, it lifts the entire shelf, because that's the most cost-effective way to get that item to be picked. Amazon, for 3 years, they had a university competition to sort of have robotic arms do the picking of that. And after 3 years, they stopped doing it. Maybe they figured it out and they're working on it in secret. But right now, the answer is that until you see Amazon starting to use a robot arm to pick items, because they do that 24/7, you're not going to see that in a home, because even in a high needs case, you might only be picking 10 or 15 items a day, where Amazon needs to pick hundreds, if not 1,000 or more. And so that's the state of the art. It's really confusing from the outside. And it's the other thing I sort of criticize the robotics industry is that it's really fun to watch those robots. I used to work on Lego robots, and we used to do what's called the hero robot. And the hero robot would be something that a master Lego builder in Denmark would do that took 6 months for them to design and would do something very fancy. And they show that because then they want to inspire a kid to buy, a set and build something with much more simpler as the first step. But in robotics, we show these crazy robots that jump around, do backflips and dance and everything. And they're not safe around people. They don't fit the boring category of, hey, what happens if you spill? What happens if there's a glass right there and you knock it over? Or there's a gas stove and you're boiling water and all sorts of things. So there's like a really humble attitude you have to have that robotics is super, super hard stuff in terms of making something work. And then any action you take on, any degree of freedom adds to that complexity. So I've had like a senior care operator out of Japan turn us down on a project as, oh no, there's this video of a robot that picks stuff up. He still doesn't, that was 4 years ago. He still doesn't have that robot. And so it's really that we're trying to solve things very discreetly, step by step. And that's sort of how that's the way we look at it. And maybe there'll be a breakthrough, but right now, again, my analogy is look to Amazon. And
thank you.
Because the analogy, after I gave that long-winded analogy to a senior living, goes like, there was a guy back in Iowa goes, yep, if Amazon ain't using it, grandma's not getting it. So that was...
Thank you, Mike.
There was a question in the chat box there from Courtney. I don't know if you saw it. If the robot is able to assist outdoors yet?
Yeah, we have to look at that. Again, there's going to be stuff that we say on the user manual and then stuff people will do to it. So it's more, first is like level floor. So can it make the transition? So like we were visiting people in Phoenix where they actually had like the garage was sort of a slope down. So there wasn't a step. So currently we don't do steps, but we could do a transition into like a level garage or like out, like, like Trisha, I think you guys had leveled your floors to make it easy. Like if someone's made their home more wheelchair accessible to go from a yard to a deck. It would drive there. There is some more complexity about, what we learned about outside is more rain and those conditions. So it's not meant to be rain proof or snow proof or anything like that. It also gets into like the outdoor robots could track dirt back into your floor and all that. But the other one is really the lighting conditions and visual conditions get just crazy out there. So my answer is it's not designed. The official user guide will say, please use only in indoor use. Will the robot actually work in some of those scenarios? Yes, but the official guide would be just use it indoors to start. Then we'll work on hosing it down and see how much it can withstand. And maybe one day we'll make an outdoor version.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other questions before we let Mike or Carrie go? I think we'll skip the networking part at the end this time. This was a great meeting, and for those of you that would like to network, we're doing a virtual networking event March 1st, which is Wednesday. So I can send you that information. I did have one more question for you all. I know you were testing in Southern California. We have a lot of Southern California folks on the call or watching the recording. Are you still looking for people to test? Have you gone on to the next phase?
We are. I mean, so basically, I think now we're trying to look at organizations. So it's usually trying to tie it with folks that we're partnering with for some other project. So it may be that. So if you're part of an organization that's providing care or assistive tech, definitely reach out to Carrie. Also, we may be doing a study that's sponsored by somebody else that we may be looking at participants. Like we might be studying medication adherence, or we may be doing a study on MS. So if just, it never hurts just to let us know. 2 robots literally are now sitting in Louisville, Kentucky for a meeting next week, and they're going to be making their way up. So there's news coming out next week about our next stage of activity. But the basic thing is, please reach out to us, because we're trying to build this connection within the community. Just like Tara, we were getting connected with Janet and Tricia and everyone you were so critical with in the beginning of the pilot. So the basic answer is, please reach out to Carrie, and we can figure out where it fits in terms of the timeline for everything.
That's great. Thank you. And Carrie attended our meeting last week or 2 weeks ago for the Seattle chapter interest group. So, and their application is in process. So we're happy to have you all as members. And
great.
Thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to myself or Carrie there in the email. And if anyone else, Scott, you look like you have something to say.
Mike and Tara, can you both stay on?
Oh yeah, sure.
For just a minute, thanks.
Yeah, great.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you for
everybody.
Tricia, great seeing you again.
Thanks for having me.